At the beginning of every financial year, the budget cycle ignites a nationwide debate on how each part of the country can partake of the national cake, with political lobbying taking center stage. But what criteria does the Minister of Finance, who in this case never works independent of the President, determine the priority areas that should be handled in every financial year? Prime Minister and Leader of Government Business Dr. Ruakana Rugunda explains what he says the government considers in making those critical decisions.
The budgeting process, government looks at the whole country and government prioritizes on utilization of the resources. One, to move the country forward. Number two, to ensure that services are rendered to the population.
DACA, that the district urban and community access roads, still get the least amount of funding under the works and transport sector. You go to a district like, go to Rukunjiri for example, you provide these graders, you provide these, this whole unit, but the amount of fuel we have given district, the amount of money to spend on fuel has remained the same for the last 10 years.
We are surviving largely by borrowing. And this is the biggest challenge facing our country today. And you cannot sustainably continue borrowing money to maintain your economy. You have to find means of generating that money.
The center of this contestation is usually how the meager resources at the disposal of the state can be equitably distributed for every part of the country to get their share of the national cake.
Our duty, our commitment is to serve all the people of Uganda in terms of services and in terms of development. And indeed, that's why some areas like, for example, Karamoja, which have been behind, have now had affirmative action to ensure that such a region comes up, catches with the rest of the country.
You will find at Karamoja, if you go to any Karamojongo person and they say, what are the key priorities for Karamoja? They will tell you three things. They will tell you, we want water, we want water, we want water. Go to Karamoja as a region on their budget. Water is the least funded budget in Karamoja.
But budget analysts question the ability of the state to do appropriation based on needs of the different regions of the country.
Service delivery, where an ordinary person meets government, is at the local government level. And it is not very difficult for government to say, please have more. Let me give you an example. You say immunization. Immunization does not take place in the Ministry of Health. Immunization takes place at a certain health center in Butaleja. But money for immunization will stay at the Ministry of Health.
The government introduced the decentralization policy that basically made the districts the centers of service delivery, but over the years, it appears the districts remain just that, political units without any financial muscles and only waiting for their fate to be determined by the central government.
All districts have budgets that they pass at the district level. Then there is money that comes from the national budget that goes to the districts. So it depends on the highlights. I'll give a very good example. My main issue in this budget in Jinja are two: municipality roads and the casualty ward in Jinja Hospital.
We want the national cake, if at all it's still there anyway, to be equitably shared.
However much we may have a bigger share of the budgeting when we cannot implement what we budgeted for, it's a wastage of time. You know Uganda's budget, you budget for this, but they do the opposite of what we budgeted for.
This scenario then calls for strategic planning at the center, yet those in charge cast doubts on how strategic our budgeting process is.
Today we are talking about shortfalls in our revenue targets. Why are we experiencing these shortfalls? Simply because the manufacturing base is not expanding well enough, so you are not able to generate enough revenue. We cannot persistently rely on imports or import duty. We have to grow beyond that and start talking about pay as you earn based on the number of people who have been employed in the economy.
I am not fixing my eyes on this budget. This budget can be a paper tiger, especially the budgets we have. It can indicate a lot of provisions. But when you go actually on the ground to see whether what they put inside the budget is implemented, you actually find that almost a quarter of what is within the budget is implemented on the ground.
And so when the appropriation bill comes to Parliament, it is a tall order for MPs to push for the interests of their constituencies.
In government, you lobby. So as MPs, you have to lobby for your districts. You have to emphasize why you need that service to come to your district.
Sustaining the budget the way it is going to be very complicated in the coming years unless we sit down and agree how to restructure this budget.
The entire world is moving through a phase of information technology. What do we do when we are budgeting? Let's put our money where we expect to build a greater and better human resource pool.
As the discussion continues on whether or not regions will get their share of the national cake, the taxpayer has no option but to meet their obligations. Sabit Joseph, NBS Live at 9.